All right, so here we go. So I guess I'll just start by introducing all of us and provide an intention for the next half hour for us. And the intention today is to help others who are viewing this understand why we do yoga and what the importance of it is at our center and why we feel so strongly about encouraging a practice of yoga and what that does to the individual, not only to their body but to their mind and to their soul or their spirit. I think there's a lot of questions that are out there floating around wondering and a lot of curiosity. And I thought that bring our teachers together to just have a really candid conversation about why we do what we do and what makes our personal practice maybe special to us, so that we can give you a glimpse or an eye view of what we do here. So I'll first introduce Trisha. Trisha, go ahead and introduce yourself and say a little bit about your practice, what you do.
Okay. I'm Trisha Fisk, and I am in the tantric tradition of Sri Vidya, which is a philosophical distinction of yoga practice where it's non-dual. It's non-dual, meaning there isn't good, bad, right, wrong. It's all, everything is created by divinity, and therefore everything in the world is that also. And I personally came to yoga. I had just left the corporate world. I was going through a divorce, and I started getting curious about what mind body stuff was. What's mind body stuff? And I started doing something called NIA. It's NIA, neuromuscular integrative action, which is kinesthetic dance movement, which is so crazy when I think about it now. And I went for a week of this, cried the entire time, and came home and thought, I had to share this with everybody. Anyway, in NIA, you got belts like in martial arts. And when I was coming up in my belts, I was told I didn't know how to breathe. And they recommended I go to a yoga class and learn how to breathe. So I went into Chicago because there wasn't much out in the suburbs. And I went a couple times to a park district and just stared in the door, too afraid to go in and actually do it. But I just watched the class a couple of times. And finally, the teacher, my first teacher, Darren Friesen, who owns Moksha Yoga in Chicago, came to the door and said, would you like to come in? And so I did. I came in and I tried it. And it was, I had no idea what I was doing. I hurt like hell for the next week from all the stretching and stuff, but I fell in love with it. And I ended up going through yoga teacher training and then giving up everything else to just focus on yoga. I learned how to
Powerful.
I learned how to breathe.
And I want to come back to what you gave up, but let's introduce everyone else and then we'll come back to that question, because I think that's a powerful, powerful statement to say that I gave everything up. Okay. April?
Jamie.
Hi.
All right. All right. So I follow Trisha. So her lineage is my lineage. And I came to yoga actually kicking and screaming. And I really still to this day find it very funny that I am in the place that I'm in right now, doing what I do full time. And I used to be a runner, and so running was the way that I kind of got lost in my own world. I had loud music that was very inappropriate playing, and I would run as fast as I possibly could, and I trained really hard. And my husband and I had suffered a loss, and running and training and working out seemed to be the best way for me to, well, now I know I was escaping, but at that particular point in time, I thought it was really helpful. And because I trained so hard, I hurt myself. And I had a friend who's like, you should go to yoga. And I was like, no. period. Like, let's talk about it. I'll think about it. I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not interested in that. I don't believe in that. And she was like, you're being so weird. Just come and give it a try. And so I went to yoga at a gym here, and it was okay. Like, it wasn't bad. It was okay. And what I started to realize was, as I continued to find consistency attending this yoga class, these heart palpitations that I was having stopped, and I was able to sleep, and my hair stopped falling out, and all of these physical things that I didn't connect to what was happening in my mind started to find ease. And then I started to find a little bit of ease in the mind. And so I went to a yoga studio, and I felt pretty good because now I had been going to yoga for like a year. And like after my first class, my teacher was like, I think you should go to the beginner's class. And I was like, what? I was like appalled. But I did, and I met this wonderful woman, and she opened the door to this beautiful practice. And what's what I find so funny is this woman who started me on this path and who actually recommended that I see Trisha for teacher training. Her husband was my very, very first yoga teacher at the gym.
Wow.
Isn't that so funny? And to this day, I still see her and we laugh. And I was like, he was like so good. And she laughs, and I was like, he was the perfect person for me to experience yoga for the first time. He was just, he was perfect. And so I've been in and out of the yoga world for a while. And about 5 years ago, Jamie and I had met. And yeah, I just feel like I've come home. So my experience with yoga, just bringing it back, was um, just recognizing the physical changes that we take on and what our body does can be alleviated by the most simplistic practices if we just take a leap and give it a try. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yep.
Thank you, April. Bridget.
Thank you. I am loving all of these connections that we are discovering through this conversation. I come from a similar lineage as Trisha. Her teacher was the student of my teacher's father, and Darren Friesian was a teacher I took classes with many, many, many moons ago. And so there's a lot of interconnectedness here. I actually was required to take yoga as part of a program that I was doing for theater. And it was the yoga and the movement that really became a healing practice for me, because within just a couple months of starting my practice, my mom passed away. So I was dealing with a lot of grief and a lot of feeling, like deep, heavy feelings. And the yoga practice really gave me a chance to be with them in a way that wasn't about having to try to figure anything out or understand where something was coming from, but to just be present with what I was experiencing. And I had one of my first healing, like personal healing experiences within those first few years of studying with my teachers because of that. And I felt the power of the practices that we were doing that were very simple. We weren't doing anything crazy, but there was something that started to shift within me. And I knew that there was something there that I needed to continue to study. And so I just never stopped. From the point of being a requirement, it grew into this beautiful, just part of who I was becoming, a part of my life. And over the years, there was a lot of, different styles of yoga that I got into depending on the different phase of my life that I was in. But I was always connected to the lineage, and I didn't realize it until many years later. And then when I found my teacher, I was studying very intensely with him and all of the other teachers within that community. And I really started to develop a strong daily practice that I believe is where the real magic really like starts to happen. And meditation and yoga nidra, restorative yoga are a huge part of that. So I discovered the softer side really served me just as much, if not more, than the active part. So for me, I needed that active part to bring me into that door of this world. And I ended up finding, ways to heal a lot of other things that started coming up in my life, both physical and emotional. And I have found that because of all of that work, I am able to trust the process, to trust what's coming next. And that trust is like the foundation of everything for me. It allows me to take risks. It allows me to be comfortable in the discomfort. And it's probably the biggest gift that I've received from my practice. Yeah.
This is so exciting. I just love this because all of you have been my teachers. And I come from this vantage point of not coming to yoga because I wanted to. And it was literally like brought to me on a weekend that was supposed to be a girls' weekend of drinking. And it somehow we ended up at this ashram in Tennessee. And we found that we were getting up at 5 a.m. every day and doing yoga all day long. I had no idea what I was doing. No idea. I was just led. And so that practice that I learned helped me tremendously through my own divorce and big life transition. And then it went kind of away. And then I met April and I started working with her one-on-one, working through a lot of my own trauma as I was building this therapy practice. And I found it to be like my life changed. My life changed. And Bridget, when you say the words trust, that word I use at least once with every client that comes in this room a day. And yoga is and continues to be the only way that I can conceptualize and feel in my body and in my soul that there is something out there that's holding me that is much, much bigger than myself. And it is only through my practice that I can feel that and I can talk about it and I can scream to the rooftop all day long about it because it's so much in here. And it's only because of that practice. So I just want to also just thank all of you for all of the work that you've done. I've worked individually with all of you, and you guys have done just amazing work and continue to do amazing work. And you guys are real teachers. And so I want to bring this bullet point back to Trisha, and maybe we can bounce through all of us of when we say that we found this practice and what it did to us. Trisha, you said, like, I gave up everything. Like, what did that look like for you?
Well, after I left the corporate world, I just wasn't sure what to do with myself. I was looking for freelance work here and there, and nothing was coming through. So I had another friend who had been in the same corporate environment as me, and she talked me into, we took the test to become personal trainers, which was so funny. Of course, I flunked it the first time, but I got a job at a YMCA and took the test again and passed. So I was working at like 5 different health clubs as a personal trainer. And then in those days, like if you were going to teach aerobics or spinning or something, it was like one weekend of training. And then now you're an expert in water aerobics and all this stuff. So I just kept doing stuff like that, looking for the thing that was going to get me excited. So when I found yoga, I gave all of that up. I had private clients. I went to people's homes. I just said, I'm sorry. I'm surrendering into yoga now. So I'm just not going to do this anymore. And I did surrender into yoga. And it was just at the time, it's like the world opened up. I mean, there was so many people so interested in what it was, that I just was enveloped in it, surrounded by it. And which is what also led me to realize I don't know enough. And that's how I ended up meeting my teacher, Rod Stryker, too, was I was looking for a teacher who really understood not just the physical practice of yoga, but consciousness and how to move through and open up consciousness to this beautiful universe. And I found that teacher.
Yes. April,
Yes.
did you give up everything?
Well, I find that most of my big life changes happened by what I perceive to be an accident or a fluke. But I do believe they were guided. So I, like I said, when I was at the studio and they're like, you should try this teacher training. And I was like, okay, well, I'll look at, I'll find Trisha. And I signed up for the class and they're like, sorry, on a whim. I'm like, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to see what they're going to do. And I signed up and they're like, sorry, we're full. And I was like, okay, well, I guess it isn't meant to be. And then it just so happens like 2 days before the training started, somebody dropped out and I got in. And so I kept my life in corporate. And actually, Trisha and I came from the same corporate place, believe it or not, which we did not know. We were both in marketing at one of the big consulting firms, just in different locations. So I feel like our lives have kind of weaved together without even our knowledge, until we were destined to meet. So, um, yeah, I think the struggle about giving things up or working in this space is sometimes people don't understand what it is. And so it can be isolating, right? It can be difficult to try to stay in one world or mindset while trying to also operate in this one. So my rub was I couldn't stay working in a corporate environment because the way they think and go about life doesn't align with my way of living in this time and in this space. So I think there is a sacrifice that goes along with choosing this path. Um, yeah. Not completely. I toe dipped. I was like, I'm gonna try it. No, I can't do that full time. I'm gonna do this. And then I came back to yoga. And then I took this certification. And then I came back to yoga. And then I took this certification and I came back to yoga. And finally I was like, God, who am I fooling? Come on. Like this is where you're supposed to be. Just quit being a sissy and get to it. And then I met you, James.
Yeah. And I didn't know what I was doing. So
Well, I think the reality is I think we're all always students.
Yes.
None of us always have all the answers.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Bridget, how about you?
It was interesting to me, Trisha, when you said this whole thing, this idea of consciousness becoming a concept in life, and the deeper you go into yoga beyond the asana, which is a beautiful place to start, and it's where many of us begin our journey, is a deeper understanding of who we really are, and that we're not just this body that's experiencing this life right now. And so when we start to see the bigger picture of who we are and how we fit into this world and what that means, that's where the trust starts to come in, because we're no longer contained to this limited space, these limited ideas. and we move into this incredibly expansive space. And so the giving up of things, it doesn't, sometimes I felt like it was a sacrifice. Sometimes I felt like it was just a natural letting go or shedding of parts of myself that were not serving me, because I would know that if, one example is I was in theater. And so a lot of people, I used to be a smoker and drinking coffee all day long. I still drink a couple cups, but not all day anymore. And so like we would go on a break from rehearsal and everyone would head outside, smoking a coffee, and I was in the theater doing back bends and handstands to build my energy back up for the rest of the day. And so it kind of felt like a little bit of a sacrifice. I missed those cigarettes. I missed that connection with those people. But then I was building other things in its place. And then another example would be, I want to get up every morning and meditate. And I don't have time to wake up at my regular time and get it done. So it has to be earlier, which means I have to go to bed a little bit earlier, which, so like those little things, you start to shed habits and ways that don't serve you, but it's because there's a deep desire, because you've touched something that feels so good. And oftentimes, I hear that it's this new space, this scary space, and I don't want to surrender into it. I hear this from my students often, especially around meditation. It's like, I've never felt myself that relaxed or be able to go to that place, and I don't know if I trust what's going to happen there. So what I always tell them is, it's actually not someplace new. It's something that's already within you. You just might have forgotten what that place feels like, or you haven't accessed it in so long, and maybe there is a lot of stuff kind of filtering its way between yourself and that space. And so take your time moving into it as much as you need to, but know that this is not something coming in from outside of you.
I love what you said just about the shedding piece, right? It is a gentle letting go consciously of things. I think it's beautifully said. Yeah.
It's interesting that we're having this conversation today of all days, because I've been practicing on and off since I've known all of you. And I'm at this place now where I'm getting up in the morning and I'm doing a practice, and then I'm doing one in the evening. And sometimes I am doing really well and I'm consistent at it. And then other times it's like 2 days go by and I'm like, oh my God, I need to get up and do this thing again. And I constantly have to remind myself that I'm learning a new way of being, because this wasn't part of my everyday at all in any of my life. None of this, none of the calm, none of the peace, none of the trust, none of the flow that tends to happen for me as I get into these spaces and I go out into my day and I surrender and I just let go and I trust. All of the things that I need just automatically kind of come to me without having to try or having to do anything. And when those things do happen to me, as they just did on Sunday, I am like in this awe of just pureness. And then I come home and I need a day just to integrate that past experience, because my nervous system is not wired for that all the time. And so it needs a lot of space and it needs a lot of stillness in order for this new way of being to really come through and integrate through my whole body. And I think that that's oftentimes what our clients face too when they're coming into yoga, and understanding that we're not going to be perfect at the mat, right away. And it's not about this perfection, and it's not about being perfect in the pose. It's not about being flexible. It's not about even knowing what we're doing half the time. It's really just being and sitting in. And so can you guys maybe comment on that a little bit for the clients that are maybe watching this and curious about why or what it's like to even come in the doors and start a practice, and what your experience has been working with them and what you've seen as growth in them?
I'll let the other two speak to what's happening within the Torus space, because I'm usually only there once a year right now at this point, since I'm in Canada. But I would love to just touch on one thing that you said, which is that without any effort or trying, things just came to you. In the moment, there might not have been effort in trying, but all of your practicing, all of the work that you did leading up to that point was trying, effort, practice. So that is one of the fruits of the labor that comes from having a consistent practice, which also, even if you miss 2 days, you recognizing that and coming back means you're consistent, right? So I think that's something that we have this idea around too, that it has to be perfect every day, a certain amount of time. It has to look a certain way. You need a statue, you need a mat, I do so many of my practices on the floor in the living room in my clothes in 5 minutes because that's what I have time for, you know? So I think that's important to remember as you begin the journey.
I'm glad you said that, and it brings me to tears. Because yes, like all of the effort that I put in, I know that I'm receiving, I'm shedding, I'm letting go, I'm creating space for more light in every practice that I do. And just and yes, that's the work, but and it is effort. But when I go out into the world, it is effortless because that light is shining through and so many more layers that it's attracting all of the things that are supposed to be for me and for all of us. So I appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
I think, at least in my experience, when people first start coming, I can sense their nervousness and their resistance, and I think there's an expectation of that they're supposed to be really flexible or be able to do really hard stuff, and just getting them to relax and talk about how they're feeling. I don't think they expect the practice to be about checking in with how they feel. It's sometimes the expectation is that it's supposed to look a certain way, like the pictures you see of someone in a yoga pose, rather than, okay, let's do an adaptation of that and talk about how you actually feel in that. So the first opening sessions are always, I can always feel the nervousness in the room and the expectation that they're supposed to do something or know something. And it's just a lot of reassuring that it's all about you connecting. It's not about how it looks outside and you trying to match that. It's about you opening into it and trusting, learning to trust that nobody's there to push you. And April, you see a lot more private clients at Torus than I do, so I'm sure you have a lot of insight about that.
Well, I'd like to say I do, but I think that's both said beautifully. Like, there is no perfection or expectation. It's just that you're showing up for yourself. And so what does that look like today, which will look different tomorrow, right? It is not perfection. It's just living in this space and in this body and showing ourselves grace, because nobody's perfect. There's no perfect practice. Like some days, Bridget, you said, like some days I'm 5 minutes on a mat in my clothes because that's what I have. Some days I have 90 minutes or 2 hours in the morning. But it's the consistency of the thought and the action that I think is most important. And somebody told me, I don't even know who it was, Trisha, it might have been you, that if you can take a deep breath, you're on your way to practicing yoga. Like that is the first step, is really just to breathe in your body in that space. And so
I take credit for that, but it wasn't me. That's beautiful though.
one of my teachers said it, and I was like, yeah, that's right. If we can just be brave enough to take one step towards ourselves and sit down on a chair or in a mat or on a sofa and take a deep breath and reconnect, then we're on our way. That's what I think is, in the very, very simplest terms, what yoga can bring, is just a reconnection to ourselves. Yeah. And so people come in and it is nerve-wracking, right? To walk in and see all these, we're bombarded by social media and these women who are beautifully tall and super lean and very flexible in these poses. And that's intimidating. I mean, personally, I was really nervous and scared to walk into an actual yoga studio. I thought, I don't have the same body. I'm not like them. I can't, I won't, I should, all of that, all of those feelings. And yeah, it's just really just taking a breath. We just have to take a breath and reconnect. That's it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. My teacher says, if you can't sit with yourself, how do you expect anyone else to?
Mhm.
So true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that has been the same experience. It is, it can be a little scary, but the space is beautiful. And, the other thing is yoga doesn't have to be that serious. You can laugh, you can talk, you can use your voice and say this feels uncomfortable. There are no rules per se. Right? And I think we just have this expectation it should look and feel a certain way, right?
Right. When I first started, I was teaching in a health club, and I actually was one of those kind of mean teachers. The door locked right at the time class started, so you couldn't come in late. And there was no talking allowed, and nobody could leave before Shavasana was over with. And I remember one day someone came, and she was a regular, and the door was locked, and I saw her outside the door start to cry. And that was it. I broke all my own rules, and I never did that again. It made me realize that it really meant something to them to come. And I didn't have to be such a hardliner to do that. But that comes from a corporate background too, I think.
It does. There are rules.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the biggest gift that I see my clients take away is that time that they get to spend with themselves. And if they're late, they're late. If they need to leave early, they need to leave early. If it was 5 minutes, if it was 10 minutes, if it was a half hour, 45 minutes, they got that time to be and sit with themselves and come back to their breath. And their world got a little bit clearer just for that bit of time.
And I had an interesting thing. In the teacher training program, Prairie Yoga's teacher training program, the students have to observe classes before they get their certification. And so I actually had someone from the studio come to Torus and observe a class. And of course it was, two people came in late and everybody's talking while we're practicing and sharing, like, oh, I hate this one, or I love this one, or how come it feels weird here? Somebody got dizzy. And when it was over with, she pulled me aside and she said, I loved that. And, I have young kids who are out of school, but when they go back in school, I want to come here and take classes here, because it's not, there was no search for perfect. Everybody was there for themselves. And anyway, it was wonderful feedback to get. I said, you mean our disaster of the class didn't throw you off? And she said, no, I loved it. That's how classes should be. So yeah, it was sweet.
It's real life,
Yeah.
right? And that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
What we want to do. It's not even what we're trying to do, but it's what we want to do.
And I think it's also that community piece, right? Like they come for yoga, but they also come to connect
Mhm.
and to see people, and those people become their friends, and then their community grows and they have more support and yeah,
Yes.
and they're like-minded, right? So it's just it starts pulling all of that together. And I think the other thing too, that I really love, or that has been interesting to witness in my clients, is the resistance to pranayama and meditation, and then the love of pranayama and meditation,
Mm.
right? So it can also seem, I think Bridget, you said it, Trisha, you touched on it also, all of us, is that meditation can be really scary. And pranayama isn't always talked about. And I definitely don't believe that it's always experienced when you go to some places, right? Like
Right.
can or can't do that. And, we all believe that it is, the asana is great, but the pranayama and meditation is where we find movement. So I do really love that some of my clients who have not, who have always had the ability but didn't know that they have this beautiful gift within them, and that they get to say and they get to decide. So yeah, I do. Pranayama is great today, and I'm willing to try this. Or today, can we just try something I already know? They again, they have a say in what their practice looks like. And then they begin to trust what they're intuitively feeling they need, but also there's a level of trust of being at Taurus as well.
Um, it's it's important to remember as a new student too that every single thing can be adapted. Everything.
Yeah.
You don't have to be able to do anything in particular, because there will always be a way to adapt it to your needs, or there's something else that does the same thing that we can offer them.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that was true to me last week when I told April I was practicing camel pose, and I was like, I can't reach down to my heels, and she's like, just put a bolster on there. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, it's so very true.
I do love it when, in the community, I'm like, oh, I teach yoga. And they're like, "Ugh, I can't touch my toes." And I was like, gosh, me neither. And they're like, what? And I was like, yeah, that's not even, that's,
Not a thing.
yeah, it's not a thing.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, has our intention been met? Does anybody have any last words for anybody that's watching and curious? And
I do. I do. And it goes back to, it's like a circling back to the trust, that the more you practice and the more tools you gain through the different practices that you do, even if you don't understand, like, oh, this would help me in this situation, or, this is what the practice is for. There is an intuition that you start to tap into when you practice consistently. And it's almost like the practices come out of you so that you learn how to heal yourself and you don't have to count on someone else to do it. That power is within you.
yes, very nicely said. I think that in the world that we're in right now, with a lot of turbulence and that people feeling a lack of safety, and the way that we're kind of worried about our finances, and we don't have the luxury right now. Some of us don't have the luxury right now of going to all of these other people on the outside of me to help me heal myself. And so one of the things that I know to be very true, I mean, I had to give up my acupuncture, my chiropractic work, my everything. And I think that there was a reason for that, because I needed to come back to my practice. because it's through that practice that I find the peace, and I don't feel as bad. My nervous system rests. I come back to my breath. I don't have to go get adjusted because I'm doing asana work and spinal work that does that for me. I'm doing that stuff, not me going outside and spending more money. I don't have to do that. I can just have a little practice right by my bed. And in the morning I get up, and in the evening I get up. And if I don't, I don't, just like what April said. But I'm steady, and I'm feeling safe, and I'm feeling peace in here versus waiting outside of me to give me some kind of peace.
Yeah, there's something pretty profound about the simplicity of it all and the accessibility of it. Can be done anywhere at any time.
And the airports even have rooms now to do yoga.
About that.
Yeah.
I know.
I'll just do it anywhere, even if there isn't a specific spot for it. My family thinks I'm crazy.
I think that's part of it, Bridget. People are always like a little side eye. There's always a little side eye happening.
Gotta get to practice it.
I love it.
Okay. Well, with that, we will end. And I hope this conversation brought lightness to all of you, my teachers that are in front of me, because it brought lightness to me. And I also hope that it brings lightness to the community that views this. And we are here if anyone has any questions. Yeah, that's it.
Shame.
All right, I'm going to stop recording. I almost stopped in my tracks and thought that it wasn't recording.
That's a horrible feeling.